Alright folks, welcome back to the channel. It's good to have you here. Now today's a bit of a slower one in terms of transfer gossip. The rumor mill's not exactly churning out anything spicy this afternoon, and honestly, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe, just maybe, we're in that lovely wee moment of calm before it all kicks off. I know I might be clutching at straws here, but let me have my optimism. While we wait for the madness to begin, there are a few things we need to go over that are actually quite interesting, especially if you're someone who keeps an eye on how the big competitions are run. And trust me, there's one in particular that could have a big say in how the Champions League plays out moving forward. Now you might have missed this one if you weren't scouring the German press this week, but there's a wee bit of buzz coming out of Germany about UEFA making some tweaks to the Champions League rules already. And this after just one season of the brand new format. You heard that right. The new format was meant to shake things up and make the whole competition fairer and more exciting, but it seems not everyone was happy with how it panned out. So UEFA's gone back to the drawing board for a few adjustments. These changes might not hit Celtic straight away, but they're still worth keeping an eye on, because you never know when our name might be in that conversation again. So what's actually changing? According to the report, UEFA is set to implement a new system regarding who gets to play at home in the second leg of knockout rounds. Now, this used to be something that only applied to the round of 16. The teams who finished higher in the group phase would get the so-called advantage of playing the second leg at home. That's now going to carry on through to the quarterfinals and semi-finals as well. In other words, if you finish in the top 8 of the league phase, remember it's now a big single table with 36 teams. You'll not just go straight to the round of 16, but you'll also be rewarded with second leg home advantage throughout the knockouts, assuming you keep progressing. This might not sound like much at first glance, but ask any player or manager, and they'll tell you playing the return leg at home can be massive. The atmosphere, the comfort, the familiarity, the crowd behind you, all of that makes a difference when it's Doherty time. And some of the bigger clubs were not shy about making their complaints known last season when this wasn't guaranteed. Arsenal, for example, were raging after finishing third in the league phase, 8 places ahead of Real Madrid, but still ended up having to play the second leg of their quarterfinal at the Bernabeu. They still went through in the end. But the principle of it felt off, and UEFA seems to have listened. Same thing happened to Barcelona, who had to face Inter away in the second leg, despite finishing above them in the league stage. They ended up crashing out, and you could argue the imbalance in home advantage played a part. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, what's this got to do with Celtic? And you'd be right. We're not quite in those quarters and semis of the Champions League just yet. But here's the thing, these rule changes are likely not going to stay exclusive to just the Champions League. If they're tinkering with that format, there's every chance similar adjustments could be made to the Europa League as well. And depending on how our qualifying campaign goes later this summer, that might be the competition we end up in. So even if it's not affecting us directly today, it's one to file away. Because if we do find ourselves deep in a European run, and who's to say we won't, these are the kind of rules that could make a difference. Another fascinating bit mentioned in the same article, and I have to say I'm quite into this one, is the possibility of UEFA scrapping extra time altogether in the knockout rounds. Now that's something I think could genuinely improve the spectacle of these matches. Think about it. How many times have we watched 2 exhausted teams slog through 30 more minutes of football, barely creating a chance, both just terrified of making a mistake? It's often dull, cagey, and frankly, a bit of a chore to watch. Most of the time, it just ends in penalties anyway, so why not cut to the chase and go straight to the shootout? That way, you preserve the drama, the intensity, and you avoid watching players dragging themselves across the pitch with cramp in both legs. Let's take it from a Celtic perspective for a moment. Remember that match against Bayern. Let's imagine just for a second that Alphonso Davies doesn't score with the last kick of the ball. I know fantasy football stuff, but bear with me. That game goes to extra time, right? There's not a chance in the world we're competing with Bayern over another half hour. We were knackered. They were still charging forward. But if that game skips the extra time and goes straight to pens, then anything can happen. Penalties level the playing field. Doesn't matter who's richer or deeper or fitter. It's just you, the keeper, and the pressure. And I think that kind of chaos is brilliant for the game. More excitement, more tension, and let's be honest, more fairness for teams like us. who might not have the same resources to rotate squads or manage long stretches of added time. Now, to be clear, this idea hasn't been confirmed yet. UEFA is still in the discussion phase, but it's clear they're open to making bigger changes to improve the competition. And personally, I'd be all for it. There's also talk of limiting the number of teams from the same country facing off too early, so no more Real versus Atletico in the round of 16, for example. But for me, the scrapping of extra time is the one that really hits home. That's the kind of change that makes the game better for everyone, especially clubs outside the elite bubble. Switching gears now, we've got a wee update from Celtic Park as well. The club has officially confirmed our participation in a pre-season tournament over in Italy called the Como Cup. It's happening between the 23rd and 27th of July, and it's shaping up to be quite the event. Reports had already leaked last week about our potential involvement, with whispers that we'd be facing off against Ajax and the host Como FC. Now it's official. And not only that, we're also set to face Al Ahly from Saudi Arabia. So that's 3 decent opponents, a lovely setting on the banks of Lake Como, and a bit of silverware up for grabs before the real stuff kicks off. So the Como Cup is now officially part of our preseason calendar, and I've got to admit it sounds like a cracking way to get the lads ready for the new campaign. We're heading out to Italy, going up against some proper teams, and let's be honest, the setting couldn't be better. I mean, Lake Como in July. That's not just a preseason tour, that's practically a holiday with football boots on. But make no mistake, even though it's being framed as a fun wee tournament, it'll still give us a proper test. Ajax, Como, and Al Ahly are all teams that will give us something different tactically and physically, and these matches are always good indicators of where we're at before the season kicks into gear. Now, there are still a few details to be ironed out, like the exact dates of the matches and how the tournament structure is going to work. From what we can gather, it looks like it'll be 2 semi-finals followed by a final. Classic 4-team format. So we'll have to win 2 games to lift the trophy, and while it's not the Champions League, it's still something to build momentum. Remember last summer in the States, we faced off against Manchester City, Chelsea, and DC United, and the performances in those games told us a lot about how the team would start the season. These preseason tours aren't just about building fitness, they're also about building chemistry, testing new signings, giving the youth a run out, and maybe more importantly, seeing how the manager wants to shape the system for the year ahead. Speaking of shaping up the squad, there's some noise coming from Honduras about Luis Palma. Now, this is one of those stories that doesn't come as a huge surprise, but still, it's worth keeping an eye on. According to media back in his home country, Luis is expected to return to Celtic for the beginning of preseason, but it might be a short stay. Reports are suggesting that both the player and the club are actively exploring options for him to move elsewhere during this window, either on a new loan or in a permanent deal. The motivation behind it seems pretty straightforward. He needs more consistent playing time, especially with the World Cup qualifiers coming up for Honduras, and he's not likely to get that at Celtic right now. Now, we've seen this before, haven't we? A player with potential comes in, doesn't quite settle, doesn't get the minutes they were hoping for, and suddenly both sides are looking for a solution. What's interesting, though, is that the reports are saying there are already 3 big clubs in Greece showing serious interest. So the idea of Palmer staying in Greek football, where he's already made a name for himself, makes a lot of sense. And from Celtic's point of view, it's a chance to potentially recoup some investment, or at the very least get him game time in a competitive league. It's not official yet, but it does look increasingly unlikely that he'll be wearing the hoops once the new season kicks off for real. And while we're on the topic of players moving on, let's give a quick mention to Scott Bain, who's found himself a new club after being released by Celtic this past week. He signed a 1-year deal with Falkirk, returning to familiar ground. And you know what? Fair play to him. He's been a solid professional during his time at Celtic, always ready when called upon, even if he was mostly backup in the latter stages. So, all the best to Scott in this new chapter. Falkirk's getting a goalkeeper with experience, and hopefully he gets the regular minutes he deserves. It's always nice to see players land on their feet after leaving a club like ours. So between potential departures, summer tournaments, and Champions League rule changes, there's quite a bit bubbling beneath the surface right now, even if the transfer scene feels a bit too quiet for some people's liking. But remember, this is usually how it goes. The first weeks of June are often full of talk and very little action, then suddenly things start to move fast. All it takes is one deal to go through, one domino to fall, and then everyone starts scrambling. That's the nature of the beast in football. For now, it's about staying sharp, keeping eyes on the right stories, and being ready when the floodgates open. And let's not lose sight of the fact that this summer is huge for Celtic. We've got European qualifiers coming up, we've got a title to defend, and there's still the question of how the squad will look come August. Will there be new signings? Of course. Will there be surprises? Always. But the real challenge is making sure the team hits the ground running when the season starts. That's why preseason matters. That's why tournaments like the Como Cup are more than just a kickabout in the sun. There are opportunities for young players to break through, for the manager to test his ideas, and for the fans to start getting excited again. And I'll tell you what, nothing gets the fans buzzing more than the thought of a proper European run. That's the dream, isn't it? Not just making up the numbers in Europe, but really competing, making teams respect us, and maybe, just maybe, getting into those latter stages where things start to feel special. That's why rule changes like the one UEFA's making actually matter, even if they seem far off. Because if Celtic ever does make that leap to the quarterfinals or beyond, then having that second leg at home could be massive. Imagine a packed Celtic Park under the lights with a semi-final on the line. That's what we all dream of. That's what the game's about. Right now, though, it's about building, step by step. And it starts with these preseason fixtures, with getting the squad together and maybe making some big calls on who stays and who goes. So keep your notifications on, keep following the news, and stick with us as we get through the early days of the window. There's plenty more to come. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. There's a fresh rumor stirring the streets of Glasgow this morning, and it's got the green and white faithful buzzing with anticipation. Word is that YOUSSEF KACHATI, the Dutch-Moroccan forward, is set to land in the Deer Green place today, with a Celtic hierarchy poised to seal what could be yet another shrewd bit of business in the summer window. Sources close to the situation are whispering that KACHATI is expected to be touched at Glasgow airport later today, sparking widespread speculation that he's here to put pen to paper on a deal with the boys. While neither the club nor the players' representatives have made anything official, the rumor mill has gone into overdrive, with some even claiming he could be unveiled at Paradise before the week's out. The 21-year-old striker, who's been making waves in the Dutch leagues with his pace, sharp movement, and clinical finishing, is seen by many as a potential long-term addition to Celtic's frontline. Given the recent uncertainty surrounding the futures of a few key attackers, a move for KACHATI could represent the board's desire to strengthen and future-proof the squad ahead of a big season domestically and in Europe. It's said that Celtic scouts have been tracking KACHATI for months, impressed by his versatility and eye for goal. Though still raw in some aspects of his game, he's considered a talent brimming with potential, the kind of player the Parkhead faithful love to see developing in the hoops. Of course, at this stage, it remains pure conjecture, but the fact he's allegedly arriving in Glasgow lends credence to the chatter. Fans have already been keeping an eye on flight trackers and social media posts, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man himself stepping off the plane. Whether this is just another transfer window tease or the real deal remains to be seen. But one thing's certain, there's a palpable sense of excitement in the air among the Celtic support. As always in Glasgow, the streets talk, and today they're whispering the name YOUSSEF KACHATI. Stay tuned, because if the rumblings are true, this could be the beginning of an exciting new chapter at Celtic Park. Hello, fan! Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.